Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. Today, I am Chamberlain Oso, reporting live from Abuja. You heard.
And reporting from Lagos.
Hey, why are you laughing?
Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
I don't know whether to call you Lagos boy or Abuja boy. You know, with this, you're proud live from Abuja. Amaya Makinde, good morning and welcome.
Well, whichever way is a statement of fact. So, and opinions are free, remember, but facts are fact. Yes, indeed. Well, you know, I don't know if this will put smiles on the faces of members of ASU or students or would-be students, because this conversation about strikes going back and forth, it's not something anybody wants to. But I'm talking about, if we could describe it as the latest thinking coming through from the VP, who was represented by the SGF, who SGF himself was also at the certain NUC meeting. So they're talking about reviewing the autonomy laws of universities. I think they've said it in different quarters, that government alone cannot fund education. So taking it to the next step is what everybody else is waiting for, having said that, because they cannot just say that and leave it hanging. And so that's why they're talking about reviewing the relevant laws on autonomy. Those autonomy laws is something that they are saying, look, something needs to be done about this. For instance, if you just read through and you see several comments concerning how much Nigerians are spending on education. For instance, the CBN, I mean, we've said that time and again, how they published a certain report saying Nigerians spend $220 million on foreign education in 3 months. In 3 months alone. That's a lot of pressure on Forex here, which we all know how telling that is on the economy. Now he's saying part of those laws they want to review, the intention is to perhaps give a lot more responsibility and powers to university governing councils, such that they can then, of course, review revenue, infrastructure, all of those challenges that they've always talked about, because he says that the challenges of Nigerian universities have remained the same over time. And that to even think that, according to him, that we've lost 50 months to strike from 1999, 4 years plus, thereabout, that is a lot. And I mean, if you go back to when the strike first started, you see that almost doubles that figure. So it's not something anybody wants to see. So all of those monies that leaves this country puts pressure on what we don't have ready. It's about time that we look to that. But I just hope that this thinking resonates amongst probably what, FEC, the president, and then lawmakers, and then National Assembly members, yes, the lawmakers, but ASU themselves, because he says there has to be this honest conversation about what needs to be done. So if that were to happen, who knows? But then I know the question of timing, can that happen now? Or if they kickstart it now, wouldn't it be sufficient for next government, whichever government that is, to pick up on that and talk about addressing those? After all, this is the time of campaign, so different presidential candidates or all political parties need to have their perspectives on this particular matter, what their plan is to ensure that we don't keep spending all this amount of money, students losing a lot of time waiting to graduate, and the education sector taking a big hit at that. And so these are some of the challenges, and who knows, if it sails through, it just may be that we'll be saying a very, very welcome goodbye to the question of industrial action in tertiary institutions, I reckon.
You know, the comments that you have made, they are far more salient than we even recognize. But, you know, one thing that we have spoken about concerning education, tertiary education in our country so far, is that we even need to be clear what the direction should be. That clarity is extremely important. I mean, if you want to go on a trip, you know where you're going. You know all the things that you need to do. If you're going on, some have been planning to go on vacation for quite a while now. They know all the expenses that they're going to incur. Hey, they even have a purse for miscellaneous or unpredictable, circumstances and all. So when we talk about, tertiary education, of course, this is this comment is coming with 60 years of the NUC in operation in Nigeria, building all of our universities, the university population, the number of universities we have above 200. So what is the direction of our education, tertiary education? I think that is extremely important to begin with. Hitherto, in years gone by, when government wanted to appoint ministers, into areas where policy direction is crucial, they engaged university dons, those who had the theories and they could apply some of those theories. Those were very, very useful in quite a number of years, 30, 40 years. I don't know if that's something that we still do today. So that is a place that we should begin with. And that will inform how we treat the university community, how we treat the academia. Let us begin from there. Let's even put a value to how important university education is to us. Everything else, in my opinion, will take off from there. The funding we're going to put into it and all. We've also spoken about the vision of the country. Exactly what is our direction? Well, not just universities, but tertiary education in its entirety, polytechnics, technical education, and all those things. They are very, very important to us. I mean, it's one thing to know the theory. It's another thing to be able to be hands-on on them. Many will cite China and some of these other countries. Where were they 40 years ago? Where were we 40 years ago? What are the things that they did? What are the models that worked for them? So I think these are some of the issues that we need to look at. Funding education is extremely important, but exactly what are we funding? I think that conversation needs to be heard. That objective needs to be clear. The House of Representatives, under the leadership of the Speaker, organized a meeting of sorts, conference, workshop, whatever it is, on tertiary education, on funding education in Nigeria recently. Some ideas were come up with. So how far with that? Who is looking at that? What initiative is government taking? Is there anyone looking at the plans or the suggestions made to ensure that when eventually we decide that we want to go forward with it, there is a blueprint on ground? I think those questions are very, very important. The model of government alone not being able to fund education, that's clear. I mean, it's been on for a long time. But how will people receive increment in the school fees now and all of those other things? How will people receive that, especially in public universities? Those questions are critical. It's a whole conundrum of issues, but how we take it on, Chamberlain, you are right. I think that's where we need to begin with.
Well, Ayo, you're very correct when you first asked that what's the direction that we're headed as far as tertiary education is concerned. And you've always asked that question, what's the vision of government for tertiary education? Why this instability in the tertiary education sector? The Vice President noted that we have lost 50 years so far. Cumulatively. So as the NUC is marking 60 years, what are the landmarks that the NUC is marking besides ensuring standards, besides ensuring that the curriculum is meeting the set targets, besides reviewing accreditation and all of that? The NUC, I believe, is also supposed to be a think tank of some sorts, for the education sector. So the NUC is also supposed to be in this conversation about how to fund education and the direction the Nigerian tertiary education is headed. Now, as far as funding is concerned, colleagues, this conversation needs to be had. We've talked about it over and over again. But then again, the education sector itself needs to be, it needs to be above board, so to speak. Part of the demands of ASU from the onset, amid these ongoing strikes that always seem to continue, is the visitation panel report. But then when you point one finger, the remaining pointing back at you. So accountability is also required from the, the university community itself. One of the visitation panel reports cited by, one of the mainstream media showed, reports, conduct that leave much to be desired, how millions of naira were approved for, services that couldn't really be accounted for. So when you're asking government to do right by you, well, will the university community do right by itself if it's giving the so-called autonomy that it requires to enable it manage its own affairs? Will we not be back at this table talking about how there's been, mismanagement of funds amid the university community itself? So these are some of the questions that we should be asking. The university community itself needs to be above board, needs to qualify for the autonomy that it's talking about. I think that aspect of the conversation also needs to be had. It's not enough for, the members of the union, to come now and again to ask government to do right by it, but also it needs to be seen to be competent to manage its own resources. If that report cited on the visitation panel to UNILAG is anything to go by.
Chamberlain.
Well, maybe I was taking for granted that when they say they'll have honest conversation, all of those subject matter will definitely be on the table because they need to ensure they have a proper framework within which they need to operate. And besides, speaking about NUC, I know they see all these reports. For instance, the one I came across in 2018 by Ernst & Young saying about 40% of university curriculum, even degrees, will be obsolete in about a decade. So they see all of those things. So I imagine that nobody wants to be left behind. After all, the world, they say, is a global village. Well, that said, we'll take a look at the dailies. In fact, right now, let's just go ahead and start off with the dailies. And by the way, Makwe joins us as well to be taking a look at some of the dailies. Morning, Makwe.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Well, I'm not the guest reviewer, but hey. Good morning.
Oh, yeah, of course. Okay, let's start off with Vanguard newspaper this morning. INEC yet to assure us on BVAS. Tunubu declares, I've collected my original certificate. Says, one of my opponents may not be Nigerian. So you want to fill in the gaps? And then says, some Nigerians stay, oh, okay, this is a different one. Some Nigerians stage hashtag harass Tinubu out of London protest. And then you also see Tunubu delegates El-Rufai, Alake, Edun to answer questions. Tunubu's Chatham House performance, a disgrace, PDP campaign. So all of that, you've got to the front page here this morning. And then today may be a big day in the legal profession. Body of Benches, NBA tackles Olanipekun, insists he must resign. So this is on the first time you're seeing some of these matters. No intention to disrupt 2023 polls, says IPOB. Well, there are several others here, but okay, I'll read your Mr. and Mrs. today so that I could get on my case. Or Mrs. is telling Mr. somewhere, saying, look, until you give me what I ask for, I'm going to act like a smartphone. Henceforth, I'm on a silent mode. And if you provoke me, I'll vibrate. And then Mr. just appears to giggle with hands in the pocket, says, don't worry. When I return from the bank, I know you switch to ringtones. So, especially with our new currency in the offing. So you never know, really. Well, that is Vanguard today.
It's that season where, Mrs. will always be happy when there's extra in the pocket. So, by all means, Mr., go to the bank. The Daily Trust is the paper I'm holding up for you this morning. And look at the lead story. Tinubu takes campaign to UK. Atiku woos Lagos voters. How I'll tackle insecurity, energy crisis. That's attributed to ex-Lagos governor. Records of my background, age, education, consistent. I'll sell refineries to raise $10 billion employment fund. That's from the PDP candidate. We're ordained to end Tinubu's dynasty in Lagos. That's according to Jandor. So you find the story on page 4 of the paper. All of it on the politicking and the campaigning currently ongoing. Look at this one. Federal government introduces menial studies, others to varsity's curriculum. Okay, you might want to take a look at page 34 to understand what that is about. Menial studies. I don't know what that means. But, you know, I mean, if you were to go with what menial means, but don't jump to conclusions. That the idea of the headlines is to tickle you enough for you to want to go inside the paper and read the main story.
Oh, butterfly, they're tickling everybody now.
Passengers' apathy as Kaduna Abuja train service resumes. Page 24, yes, that started yesterday. So let's see what happens in the coming days. You know, maybe this is as a result of the fact that a few days back, I think sometime in November, they had said that the train service was going to resume in November, and then it didn't start. Maybe a lot of people felt they couldn't plan based on, you know, what the government would say, you know, exactly uncertainty. So people would just say, okay, if it starts, fine. If it doesn't start, fine. But I'm not gonna start on the day that it starts, because
so start first. I'll join you later.
Exactly. Page 24 might give you reasons. I mean, this is just me throwing conjectures. It was interesting to also see those who had suffered in that crash back on the train on the very first day, you know, on making their way to Abuja. Page 24, as I said, will give you details. Federal government orders redeployment of prison officers who cannot shoot to kill. Okay, so it's a page 5 read for you. I mean, is this that they've done a training and they found out that those who cannot shoot to kill, or those who will not shoot to kill, or those whose religion prevents them from shooting to kill? I don't know. I want to read the story because they cannot shoot to kill is in parentheses. So, federal government orders redeployment of prison officers who cannot shoot to kill. So,
how did they get in there in the first place? Those prison officers.
Page 5.
I'd like to see the employing officers.
Page 5.
Who approved the employment.
The idea is to tickle your curiosity.
Well, this is doing more than that now.
And read page 5. Let's leave it there for the paper.
Okay. Well, I'd like to think that, you know, our officers are employed for the long haul, but those who cannot shoot to kill, well, I really don't know what to think about that. Let's now turn our attention to Leadership newspaper this morning, and it leads with a matter of security also. Look at this. December 31 deadline. Security forces have 25 days to rout bandits, terrorists. Take a look at the riders. Military yet to arrest 19 wanted terrorists. We have killed 2 in airstrikes. That's attributed to the defense headquarters. And the last of the riders, NAF jets kill 7 Zamfara bandits in Kaduna villages. If you want details, you'll find them all inside page 4. Let's go above, you know, the big story now to see this one already captioned in other papers. But, you know, we could also take a second look at it. At Chatham House, Tinubu reels out policy direction, and that got a lot of Nigerians talking yesterday. And we're going to hear a bit more about that later on. But if you want to find out how Leadership renders it this morning, it's a page 7 read. Let's take a look at some more that would interest you this morning. Let's see above the nameplates now. The presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party is speaking, and he says, "I'll sell all refineries as president."
Sorry.
Ayo, you didn't have cough when we arrived this morning.
I needed to clear my throat.
Okay, all right.
Phlegm in my throat.
All right. Okay, that understood. I wonder if you cough over this one as well. Just beside it, oil theft. We didn't indict NNPC Limited before Senate committee. That's ascribed to the Navy, and it's a page 6 read. Well, perhaps you can tie all of this together if you pick up a page Leadership newspaper this morning. That will be it for Leadership.
Sorry about that. Bukola, please be careful. When Malpe cleared her throat, you didn't say anything, please.
No, but you're right beside me.
Yes, so just saying. The Daily Times newspaper has this one on its front page. It's also talking about security of the elections. 2023 elections, army must remain neutral. Buhari, it's like the umpteenth time the president is saying that. Insists on sustaining human rights obligations during operations. Says May 29 handover sacrosanct. Right under the picture on the front page, Nigeria, Vietnam strengthen ties in digital economy, agriculture, and the rider, as both countries high defense cooperation, beg your pardon, as both countries sign defense cooperation agreement in Hanoi. Find the details of that story on the front page, continues on the inside pages of the paper today. Right above the nameplate, Festival of Youths, Entertainment and Culture, Michael Obi, Utopia Partner for African Youths. All of that you'll also find continue on the inside pages of the Daily Times newspaper this morning.
Okay, take a look at this Nigeria next. Pro-anti-Tunubu protests rock Chatham House dialogue. That is a big lead on the front page of this Nigeria today. Ex-Lagos governor outlines agenda, affirms parentage, and then you also see dismisses allegations of age falsification, academic records. So that is a big lead. At the bottom strip, you see PDP Lagos rally. Liberate yourselves, says Atiku. G5 group boycott event. So, all politics on the front page in terms of the big lead you see here today. And then you also get to see military airstrikes kill 7 terrorist commanders, many others in Northwest. So that December 31 deadline appears quite instructive, a good thing. So fingers crossed, and hoping and wishing them all the best as they go all out to ensure that is done. And that is this Nigeria this morning anyways.
If you look at what New Telegraph has on the front page, it says, Wike to Atiku, we need peace. G5 won't condone more attacks from Presidential Council. That is from the New Telegraph this morning. Is that stretching an olive branch?
Yes, so.
Okay.
Yes,
This is a rather aggressive, stance saying we need peace. What we really want is peace. Wants party to be together for electoral victory, says Dogara lacks character.
Ouch.
Former speaker fires back, says Rivers governor shallow-minded, dealing with amnesia. You find details on pages 2 and 8 of the paper. Look at this one. Strikes. Federal government to amend law on varsity autonomy. NECO declares war on exam malpractice. Okay. A very interesting picture on the front page of New Telegraph this morning, because I had to look very clearly to ask, am I seeing clearly this morning? Yes, indeed, I am. The picture you see there, 5, shall I say, gentlemen. The president is right in the middle, or is that 6 of them, beg your pardon?
Yeah,
6 gentlemen. The Kebbi State governor is there, Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, Sultan of Sokoto is also there. And you also see the president, then you now see the founder of Bua Group, and also the chairman Hairs Holding is also there. Then you see the governor of Sokoto State, okay? Just in case you're wondering what it is about, well, it's the other way around. The president went to Sokoto. It was during the 2022 Chief of Army Staff Annual Conference in Sokoto. So the governor of Sokoto obviously was the host, and he had to welcome the president. And you also see the Sultan of Sokoto right there. Of course, 2 main business executives there, and the governor of Kebbi State. Maybe also just jointly welcoming the president. I don't know. But that makes sense, because I was just wondering, it's a political season. The governor of Sokoto State is it the director of the
head of chairman of NGF?
Not just the chairman of NGF, and the back and forth that's been going on between the NGF and the federal government in recent times. but also I think is the director of the Presidential Campaign Council of the PDP.
Yeah.
So you have to ask, what exactly is happening? But some things are beyond politics. So, and you know, the army is one of them. So that's why the picture is there and is significant. Reps probe 4 trillion naira electricity bill owed Nigeria by Benin Republic, Niger, and Togo. Sometimes you're not sure if it's Niger or... But when you look at it in the context, you know it's Niger. They're looking at the monies owed by foreign countries to our electricity companies. 4 trillion naira in all. The reps are probing it. You might want to look at page 5 to see what that is about. Let's leave it there for New Telegraph.
And from New Telegraph, let's take a look at the Nigerian News Direct this morning, and he leads with, energy matters. This is the way the big story is captioned. Nigeria energy crisis. FG vows attainment of OPEC's 1.8 MB per day, that's million barrels per day quota, before Buhari's exit. Now, the FG had better be careful now. It's just 90 days to the election and a couple of more, before the handover. So they had better be careful what promises they're making if they're not realistic, so they don't get the hopes of Nigerians up. There's so many promises counting already, that haven't been fulfilled. Well, I don't know how you're looking at it this morning. Are you about to have another cough, Ayo?
No, I'm not coughing.
Okay.
I'm wondering why you're wondering.
Just wondering.
I'm wondering why you're wondering.
Let's take a look at the riders. As downstream crisis sparks labor reactions, NLC vows to resist any price increase in name of subsidy removal, as Atiku vows to privatize refineries if elected. Well, that's it for the lead story.
Maybe the intention of or rather the hope of the president is that even if he makes the promise, his hope would be, okay, if an APC government takes over, we'll just sustain the promise.
Sustain the promise.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I wasn't there when he was making it.
Okay, let's look at this one. Isan Confab, CBN to collaborate with stakeholders to check rising cyber attacks. And lastly, campaign issues. Tinubu, Atiku fight dirty, cast stones at each other. Well, that's what we're already seeing as far as the campaigns are concerned. Let's hope that there'll be some decorum before the election proper.
Let Nigerians vote right. The Guardian newspaper has this one on its front page. Lead story, 7 years after Buhari falters on 24 million jobs promise. Now, that promise again, so I don't know. And look at the riders. MBS fails to release unemployment rate since 2020. Gige's claim of 7 million jobs created unlikely. NDP 2021 to 2025 to create 30 million jobs, a mirage, says Oyerinde. No honeymoon for who will take over from Buhari, this is ascribed to Ojo. It will require 3 governments to clean up this administration's mess. Who said that? To whom was it said? All of that you'll find on the inside pages, as well as this one. Insecurity, COVID-19, others undermine effort to lift 100 million out of poverty. That story continues on page 8 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Of course, right under the nameplate, that story we've talked about all morning. I'm ready to lead Nigeria, Tinubu says at Chatham House. And right beside that one, FG decries opposition's downplaying of Buhari's achievements. That story is on page 3. Well, I don't know what to say to you, because if they downplay it, why don't you play it up? Let's see it. It's just as simple as that. It's communication, give and take. Let's leave it there for the Guardian newspaper this morning.
All right, that ends a look at some of the dailies here this morning. We will be back in just a moment. Join us again.
After much media anticipation, it all came down to this moment here at the Chatham House in London, an institution known for promoting intellectual engagement over issues of global interest, where the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Chief Bola Tinubu, is set to ventilate his thoughts on national and global affairs. It's a packed room with associates, supporters and the media, including APC governors and leaders who accompanied him to the UK for the meeting.
I'm delighted to be chairing today Mr. Bola Ahmed Tunubu. Welcome back to Chatham House.
Chief Tinubu begins with his appraisal of election management and his strong opposition to electoral violence and malpractice.
Recent statutory engagements, enactment, and allowing the use of technology, the tools for the accreditation of voters and transmission of results, we deliver the fairest and freest election in our nation's history. I stand firmly against all forms of electoral violence and intimidation.
The presidential candidate then establishes a nexus between national security and economic development as he highlights on improved agriculture and he hints to further liberalize the energy sector if elected.
The centralized approach to energy policy infrastructure is not an optimal arrangement, and it is unlikely to improve by mere tinkering around the sites. The federal government, as regulator, an operator, and a price fixer, is a broken model. We are sure to fix this.
Chief Tinubu ends his about 25 minutes presentation with applause from his supporters and others, and then it's time for engagement.
Some would say something is going badly wrong with NNPC. Some would blame it on the organized theft of Nigeria's oil. What is your solution to this very pressing problem?
However, Chief Tinubu describes leadership as teamwork, asks his associates to respond to the questions asked.
To demonstrate that, I will choose the first question, assign it to Dele Alake.
Okay.
And the second question, assigned to Nasiru El-Rufai.
In the first 6 months of the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration, oil theft would not only be reduced tremendously, the goal is to stop it in its entirety.
Nigeria has about 300,000 policemen for a population of over 200 million. We need at least twice that number. That will be achieved by amending the Constitution so that policing can be at federal, state, and even at community level.
And this journalist, Priscilla Wipo, raises questions about his perceived dodgy character and his age.
There are issues at the moment running with regards to your identity, with regards to your age. So I wonder if you could provide some clarity on the issues of your identity and age, and also let us know when we can engage with you one-on-one.
The record is there. The transcript is there. So in March 1952, I'm not claiming another father. I am Tinubu and Tinubu proper. If they want a DNA, they could as well require for one.
And this is a response to why he avoids media engagements.
I see myself as a marketable individual. Want to use me to make money, and I'm saying no.
This forum with Chief Bola Tinubu at Chatham House will no doubt elicit reactions from different quarters in the coming days. He has, however, made his case for why he should be elected. As the Institute says, this is the first in the series of meetings in the run-up to the 2023 general elections. Jeffrey Uzongo, Channels Television News.
Right, well, those gentlemen join us next. Ali M. Ali, Deputy Director, Media and Publicity for the APC Presidential Campaign Council. Good morning. Thank you for coming in today.
Good morning, It's good to be here again. Good
morning,
we
also do have Mr. Daniel Boala, who also joins us as the spokesperson, Atiku Okowa Presidential Campaign Organization. Good morning, Mr. Boala. Thank you for joining us as well today on the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Okay, Mr. Ali, let's start with you. Of course, you've seen the hoopla this is generated over this Chatham House interview. But they will not rest. They keep talking about some of these things. Particularly, I know you also heard that part, how they thought that he ought to have addressed those issues headlong. But give us your impression of perhaps that performance and what you heard them say.
Well, I would say he did very well, as expected. Maybe to the surprise of his traducers, who thought, as usual, there will be one or two glitches, and they will latch onto that and make a feast out of it. But you can see that he spoke well, and the reaction, of course, naturally, people react differently. Some would applaud, and some would naturally condemn. And such is the enigma called Bola Ahmed Tinubu. All the time, what he says or he fails to say would engender mixed reaction, because he's an enigma, so to say. You can, I mean, from even the audience, people are still asking about his identity, about the mystery called Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But I would say you spoke extensively. Most of what he said actually is rooted in his action plan, in the 80-page document unveiled a couple of weeks ago, about how Nigeria's role on the continent of Africa and how foreign policy from the time Nigeria became independent nation state has centered around first repelling external aggression, promoting domestic growth, and ultimately making the country relevant on the continent and in the Committee of Nations.
All right. Mr. Bola, I mean, the APC doesn't see anything wrong in that performance. They said it was a deliberate style of their presidential candidate, of which the PDP won't stop going on about this one. So in context of what the APC has said, that they don't see anything wrong with that, you still maintain your stance, the PDP?
Well, it is strange and surprising if they said it's a deliberate strategy. Then it is a strategy that isn't syncing with the Nigerian people. First of all, let me tell you, it wasn't, the caption was that Tinubu addresses the world on the economy, security, and foreign policy. When in actual fact, Tinubu moved big personalities from Nigeria. He came and joined up with APC members in London and then a few lobbyists in that building. And that is why this morning, I'm in London here, not a single British tabloid covered or carried any news relating to the Chatham House. And you can juxtapose that with February 18th, 2015 Chatham House interventions that APC came when Muhammadu Buhari told the world that if APC was voted into power, the world will have no reason to worry about Nigeria in respect of security, economy, and fighting corruption. So the meeting of yesterday turned out to be a self-indicting eulogy, where you report yourself to the very venue where you came and gave false promise to the world about what you and your party will do to the Nigerian people. Because yesterday, when he came, he talked about security. And the world kept laughing because they know the security situation in Nigeria. In the past 7 years, the government of APC spent over $7 billion and procured every equipment conceivable. We still have security challenges. On the economy, the next government, in the first 3 years of the next government, whoever wins, is going to spend over 30 trillion. You are going to pay on debt over a period of 3 years. And you are going to do that at a time when, for the first time in the history of Nigeria, the NNPC does not have anything to remit. But look at the funny part, the disgraceful part of the conversation. When asked questions which of course ought to have been personalized. He ought to answer it because he presented a lecture. So you answer the question. You don't present a lecture and redirect question. But look at the funny part. When asked the question on oil theft, he redirected it to somebody who does not have a responsibility, is not running for that responsibility. When it came to fighting insecurity, he redirected the answer to El-Rufai, who not long ago told the world that bandits have surrounded Kaduna and about to take over Kaduna and form government, that El-Rufai should tell the world their plan or their reactions to fighting security. When it came to oil theft, which is a national security threat in the country, he assigned it to somebody who have no knowledge whatsoever of the activities of oil and oil theft in the Niger Delta. And what he did yesterday was that for every question that he was asked, and he redirected it to people, in other words, abdicating responsibility, by the time they say one or two things, then he will pick a word. In other words, he was acting like a robot. Now, I'm saying that with every sense of respect, because we are trying to elect a president that will be answerable to the Nigerian people. Now, even the journey to London is needless. Why? Because the Nigerian press are the only ones carrying what you went to London to do, which was reflected in your early analysis on the
Mr. Bola,
but the British tablet have not done that.
Before you go way too far, Mr. Ali will definitely will want to respond to some of what you've said. Go ahead.
Well, you know, like the candidate stated, leadership is collective. His style is that, look, he came with a team. And you could see that from his responses, he responded to some of the questions. He merely asked members of his team to speak, to respond to some of these questions. But you expect critics, the opposition, to pick holes in what the delegated others to speak on his behalf. But all said and done, the message is there. It says the questions raised, they've been answered. They've been answered.
You do know that there have been big question marks about the cognition or cognitive abilities of your candidate. Because I know that in your first statement, one of the things you said is that the opposition was waiting for, as usual, that's what you said, as usual, some glitches in his speech. And those glitches have put a very big question mark on the cognitive ability of your candidate. And there have been questions as to whether or not he's really together enough mentally and cognitively to be president of Nigeria. So when, I mean, after he finished the speech, which was put in the teleprompter for him, he read it, you know, or let me say spoke to it, as we would say in as we would say in the media. He spoke to it, but then we're expecting that he will follow up that performance with taking of questions, but that was delegated, which raised, you know, even further questions about his cognitive ability. Do you think that that was a wise decision on the part of your party, or was that playing it too safe for a candidate whose cognitive abilities have been called to question?
You know, a lot of people say the candidate's cognitive abilities is on the decline, and they make a fist out of it. You see all kinds of memes on the social media. But you see, occasionally it happens to people, senior moments. They call it, I think, in medical terms. Occasionally you have that. And when you have the amount of information at the disposal, even, I'm sure some of us, even in the newsroom, sometimes when you are inundated with all kinds of information at your disposal, you are meeting, you are having late night, you expect maybe once in a while, senior moment. It happens to the best of people. And then, as we're reading from the teleprompter, a lot of world leaders do that. Like you said, they speak to it. So I wonder how people arrive at that conclusion, especially...
Which conclusion?
That his cognitive abilities are on the decline. And that's why perhaps he played it safe by delegating some of this, by asking some people to respond to some of these questions. But I wonder how they arrive at that. We've seen so many of other candidates making these occasional glitches in speech, in communication. And I don't see a lot of people losing sleep over that.
Is there anyone that the PDP has made?
Well, a couple of them. I don't want to go, not PDP. We've seen instances where some people refer to states as countries, for example.
Okay. Now, assuming that were the case, I mean, your style is, the party can choose whatever style they want.
Yeah.
But when asked about health, maybe your personal health, I mean, I thought you know your health more than anybody else.
Exactly.
But should somebody else be speaking about your health?
Certainly not. And he has said it in the past that, look, it's not a wrestling bout, that he is healthy enough to run the affairs of the country. And that he's not going into a wrestling bout, he's not going into a wrestling contest, he's not going into a duel, boxing duel. It's about how his ability to do the job. And then you can see from how he has networked over the years, how he has remained very relevant in the political discourse, national political discourse over the years. From the time he became governor in 1999 to this moment, he has remained in the center stage of national political discourse. You can't take that away from him.
Well, Mr. Bola, he seems to be saying that, look, the candidate has a team around him. He has to find a way to introduce and demonstrate that he's got, you know, credible and relevant persons around him, hence that approach which you frown against.
So let me help them in case they need help in that regard. You can constitute a team after you have become president and have appointed individuals into specific roles. Therefore, when you have engagement like that, you can ask them to speak because you have assigned them and you will hold them accountable. You do not apportion responsibility to teams when they are not going to be on the ballot. The people who want to vote in Nigeria, they want to vote a man. A man they want to assess his suitability or otherwise. That's number one. The idea that he has a team and that is their style is a fallacy of generalization. And people can see that. As regards what they call temporary gap, from the day he declared to become president till today, including yesterday, there has never been a day where you will not find gaps. And these gaps are not just misspelling or mispronunciation. They are gaps of fundamental issues which reflect, for example, the cognitive ability of that person. The Constitution is clear about who wants to be the president. Now, you are talking about somebody who was asked personalized question as regarding his age. Do you need somebody to speak to someone about your age? Were they there when you were born? You have for now in the media space about 3 different dates of birth. There is 1952, there is 1954, and there is 1953 or thereabout. And you have not cleared that. Another fundamental question is about his identity, which includes his name and the school he went to. You don't abdicate that responsibility to somebody. Then about education. If they are asking you questions that relates to individuals other than you, after you have made the intervention, you can say, okay, I want ABC to add further. So in other words, what he is doing is that he is saying, Nigerians, I want you to vote 5, 10, or 12 of us. And a man who does not have regard and respect for the freedom of the press, look at the Constitution. The freedom of the press is as important as fundamental human right. He has abdicated the responsibility of appearing before the Nigerian press, but he went to what he called the rest of the world to appear before them. In fact, he was even challenged in Nigeria. They say, if you can select any TV house, select a TV house of your choice, but appear and talk and let the Nigerian people ask you questions.
All right, Mr. Bola, let me bring in my colleagues from Lagos. But about his age, he actually spoke to his age at that event, didn't he? So how is that still in contention?
Okay, if you want me to answer that before you take that to your colleague, let me tell you this. About his age in reaction or in response to that, he said, if they want DNA, do you say if or you produce that? He said, I am Bola Ahmed Tinubu. If you are asked, okay, look at it this way. The INEC form that you sign, and you do that as an affidavit like you saw under oath, the age is different from the age specified in the passport containing the visa that he carried. Then you look at it from certain documents that were procured from Chicago, and you see discrepancy. When you have that kind of discrepancy, you, like the way in our law practice, we say document speaks to document. You are to present a document as to he even said that I now have my original replacement certificate with Chicago. Why don't you release it to the press?
All right, let me bring in my colleagues to go ahead, guys.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Well, let me begin with you, Mr. Bwala. I mean, twice in your response to the previous question before the age question that you answered, you mentioned the fact that the Constitution you suggested that the Constitution is being breached one way or the other. Talking about its cognitive ability, you said the Constitution is very clear about who will become president. And also talking about, whether or not he should face the press, you said the Constitution is also clear about that. So I'm just wondering if you think there is a legal issue to be taken up with the APC or with the candidate of the APC in that regard. Has he breached the Constitution accordingly from the responses you gave?
So that is the problem we have sometimes, and not your fault generally, with journalists. When interventions are made regarding issues, they tend to want to tie it to the law, to say, if it is the law, why don't you go to court? The court of public
one that brought in Mr. Bwala, just a second.
Matters that relate to the court of law will certainly be taken. I'm coming.
Okay.
Please allow me. Oh,
go
you don't allow.
Just go ahead.
Allow
go ahead.
to
Go
finish
ahead.
now, so that you will be able. You can actually the follow up. Matters that relate to the law will certainly be taken to court by members of the legal profession. What the Nigerian people are doing, you are not facing the court of law when you are running for office. You are facing the Nigerian people. There are moral issues. There are ethical issues. They are issues fundamental to engagement leading to election. They are much more important than the legal issue. Because the idea that there is freedom, when you talk about he breached the Constitution and freedom of the press, he did not arrest any journalist. He refused to appear before certain press, and he was asked, choose your own and go. He has a television house, and he refused. When you don't do that, it's not a matter of law. It's a matter of disrespect to the sensibility of the people you're seeking for them to employ you as the number one president of the Federal Republic.
Oh, I brought in the Constitution issue because you are the one who made it clear. You said the Constitution is very, very clear on that. That's why I asked that question about whether or not, and you mentioned it twice. That's why I asked the question whether or not you thought, it is something that is salient enough for people to give attention to. Now, talking about some of the content of the issues that are raised, and I don't know, maybe if you think that the personality of the individuals in the run-up to the elections, to the general elections, is overshadowing the content of the things that they are saying. There are those who would wonder whether or not, the issues being raised by the various candidates running for office is as important as the personality of the people who are raising the issues.
Yes, thank you for that question, and here is the answer. The personality of the person is issue, much more important than the issue stated in the manifesto. Why? Because the Nigerian nation cannot afford to elect somebody that will be a subject of blackmail by foreign agent or foreign government. And I give you an example. In the build-up to the 2016 election, Donald Trump, a question was raised as regards his activities in Russia, and they were saying that he should not be voted for. They did that because intelligence report had it that during his days of beauty pageant, he was in Russia, and the hotel where he stayed, secret cameras were placed that recorded his activities with women. And the American public feared that if elected, the Russian government might use it to blackmail him. Well, to cut the long story short, he won the election, and for 4 years could not say anything against Russia. He was defending Russian intelligence over and above the American intelligence. Do you know why? Because they had his dossier. They will blackmail him. Now, you have somebody who wants to be a president. You don't know where he was born. You don't know when he was born. You don't know how he grew up. You don't even know the school he went to. Even the Chicago that he went, there are multiple documents that suggest that somebody by name Bola A. Tinubu, female in Chicago, went to that school before himself went after that female died. Now, you need to clear them. They call it house clearing. You need to clear them aside. Then you come back to issue, because when it comes to issue, I can talk here till the cows come home, that their entire manifesto is a campaign against their own political party. Even yesterday, when he was talking about electoral violence and his commitment to fight electoral violence, which political party is perpetrating the violence in Nigeria as we speak today? To the point where the president of that party had to call the National Security Advisor, Inspector General of Police, to give promises to the world that they will not allow that states where their own governors are governing would intimidate others, fight others, and kill people from coming to campaign. Now they have even escalated it to threats to our lives. I have reported a couple of times threat to my personal life. He went there and said, I'm committed that there will not be electoral violence. So if you come to issues, I will give you 1,000,001 issues to buttress the fact that what they are doing is what we call the conflict of self-interest, where they know they failed on the 3 promises that they gave, and they are now using the same 3 promises in another word as a packaged promise to the Nigerian people.
All right, let me take the same question.
Of identity
yes.
is important because identity defines your destiny.
Okay. Well, Mr. Ali, you've listened to Mr. Boala, and I'm almost certain that you have your answers or responses ready to some of the issues that he has raised. But if you don't mind, begin with this issue that he raised about the importance of the individuals over and above the issues that they are campaigning with.
Well, certainly leadership, when you aspire to lead the exalted office of the president, naturally it comes with the territory. You'll be subjected to the crushable, naturally, because some of the issues he raised, they are actually overflocked. They are issues that have been raised in the past, and I think Nigerians know they are in the public domain. Now, let's talk about this thing about the constitutionality of, his duel of which we asked him about the freedom of the press. But also the Constitution is clear. I'm not a lawyer, he's a lawyer. About the right, the freedom of association. You can choose to associate with whoever and whoever, whatsoever, you know. So, and now the issue of whether multiple identities, like I think he likes to, I think the onus is for people like him to prove otherwise. And like you said, some of these charges are not new. They've been done in the past. But you look at it even, there are others who have taken it a notch higher, but where did that take them? So I think it's a dead end for critics, for the opposition element.
Your candidate's response to the concern about his absence at one-to-one engagements, particularly at home during presidential debates, was that he would rather not have, he said something to the effect that he would rather not have people cash in on his personality to make money, something to that effect. How tenable is this response to this very critical concern? I ask this because surely when he got into the race, he knew the requirements that he would be scrutinized by the media and the people such that he can present his plan, his vision for the Nigerian people should he become president. So how tenable was this response?
But, well, how tenable it is? Of course, the media sometimes, a section of it that is. We've seen that happen in the past. I remember in the days of General Babangida, every now and again you see cover stories about things that did not actually happen. We've had instances where a magazine went to town way back in history with a cook-up story about a coup d'etat that never happened. So names could be used, names like his, to either to get the ratings up or to make money out of it. So yeah, it's tenable in some instances.
In some instances, I wonder what that people will make of that. But if he couldn't subject himself, if he refuses to subject himself to the simplest, forms of requirement as far as accountability is concerned, why should Nigerians then vote for him?
He's taking his campaign to Nigerians. He's taking it to them. The media, incidentally, is one vehicle, but he's going to them directly. He went to Kaduna, for example. He spoke at the one event in Lagos not too long ago. He's taken his campaign directly to the people. And he has said over time, we've said we maintain it that, look, especially in the case of this particular media organization, there are reasons why he said he's not going to attend any of the town hall meetings. We've explained
Mr. Lee,
this
there
over
are
again.
no scrutinies at the campaign level. There are no scrutinies at the campaign level. There are no questions. There's no ideological debate at the campaign levels. Are you trying to say that the campaigns are more important than, you know, those debates where Nigerians would want to hear his ideas, you know, for the transformation of the country, which are the critical issues that they require, that they want to hear about, you know, from an incoming president?
You see, most of the issues, most of the debates are captured in his action plan, and they are there. His action plan speaks virtually on every other issue. So it's just a matter of style. He's
right.
spoken in the action plan. Everything is captured there. So it's just a matter of time. And look, the campaign just started barely a month ago, and it's still work in progress. Don't be surprised that there might be a change of heart.
I'm glad you said they're contained in his action plan.
Foreclosing anything.
I'm glad you say that they're contained in his action plan and in his blueprint, you know, and the international community at that event would have wanted to hear that from him, which is where I will be headed, but that will be after the break. You're watching Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. We still have with us Mr. Ali Ali. He's the Deputy Director, Media and Publicity, All Progressives Congress. He's in our Abuja studio. And we have Mr. Daniel Bwala, spokesperson at Atiku Okowa Presidential Campaign Organization, who joins us via Zoom. We're still reviewing the Chatham House engagement, during which the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress made that big appearance yesterday in London. Mr. Ali, we're still looking at, you know, the response of your presidential candidate to some of those questions. And, you know, in his defense, you say that they're contained in his blueprint, and that can be seen, his vision can be seen in his blueprint, which is why I'd like to ask, some of the questions raised there were critical to that blueprint, and Nigerians and indeed the international community would have wanted to hear directly from him, you know, for him to speak to the blueprint. But then he delegated the questions to members of his team who, would I say now, did they particularly speak to the blueprint? In your view, did they speak to this blueprint that you talked about in their response?
Well, it's a team, so they are familiar with the content of the action plan. Every member of the team is familiar with the content of the action plan. Some of them are party to its drafting. So yes, they spoke about some of the things contained in the blueprint, in the action plan. Especially if you look at El-Rufai spoke extensively on security and related matters. He spoke about the numerical inadequacy of Nigerian security forces. He spoke about policing, about the inadequacy of the military, and then the nature of the insurgency, separatism, banditry the nation is facing, and how the Nigerian military forces, perhaps we are not equipped to deal with this kind of war. They are trained to protect the nation's sovereignty, territorial integrity, not to fight an insidious enemy, not to fight an insurgency or banditry. Now, with that in mind, I mean, like it's contained in the action plan of the candidate, how he plans to tackle that. And first, to boost the clear numerical inadequacy. I'm talking about security now. And then if you go to health, somebody raised an issue about health also. Is there in the action plan?
Just hold on there, Mr. Ali, before you go to health. Before you go to health, may I come in there? May I come in there? Still with security,
Yeah.
someone asked a very important question about how the Defense Pact entered into with Nigeria by the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom had benefited, you know, the generality of the people. And the response of the Speaker of the House of Representatives was about the Leahy Law, about how it has affected Nigerians in the bid to procuring equipment, and about how restrictions of that law may need to be reviewed. But that has been done already, and Nigeria has taken delivery of Super Tucano aircraft. So the response to the question, I believe, should have been about how defense pacts, bilateral or multilateral, has benefited Nigerians to the effect that it has helped in the fight against insurgency. So is that response satisfactory, in line with the blueprint that you talk about, and about how the fight against terrorism will be sustained?
Yeah, partly yes, because with that agreement now, we see some of these superpowers now agreeing to sell arms to Nigeria, especially the Tucano, which has helped tremendously in reversing the fortune of the counterinsurgency effort. It has helped tremendously in doing that. But even at that, the counterinsurgency process is consuming a lot of resources. For example, now, the military expert will tell you that every sortie the Super Tucano jets carry out, it costs the thousands of dollars. So it's costing the nation a lot of resources. But even at that, with the retooling, which this government has done greatly in retooling the armed forces, in reinvigorating the Nigerian armed forces, which has not been done for all the years until the APC government came into office a couple of years ago. Now, with that, it has changed the depressing narrative of territories being annexed, foreign flags being hoisted, republics declared by insurgent elements. And of course, with the recovery of some of these annexed territories, and then the insurgent element dispersed from their, if you like, the northeast region. Some experts will say, look, it has taken a different dimension. They dispersed into the northwest, became bandits. And of course, you can see the unholy, well, if you like, the alliance between bandit elements and insurgents elements and terrorists, which I think early in the year, there was this misfortune that happened to the rail between Abuja to Kaduna, which was sabotaged, and then foreign insurgent terrorists claim responsibility. But all said and done, beyond the retooling of the Nigerian Armed Force, especially the Armed Force and the Air Force, and even the Army, there is numerical inadequacy. And also there is the nature of the training. The doctrine has to be changed, which RFI elaborated, spoke extensively on. Look, the training, they have to be retrained to face a kind of war we are facing now, the asymmetrical warfare we are facing now. You are dealing with an insidious enemy. He's within the population. He studied the weaknesses of this community or the society, and they know the soft underbelly of the society.
Well, Mr.
So
Ali,
yes, with that, we think it has tremendously helped to reverse the misfortune that has befallen the nation in the last couple of years, since banditry, since terrorism started about 13 years ago now, in 2009.
Now there are opinions will be divided on that as to how efficiently or effectively your party has handled the security angle over the years, depending on who is looking at whatever data. But I'm pretty sure that Mr. Daniel Bwala has some responses to a number of issues that you have raised in your responses to my colleague Bukola's question. Mr. Bwala, please go ahead.
Right. Yes. So first of all, let me start with the Kaduna incident. The candidate of APC does not have a clue about what is contained in their manifesto. He said it by himself in Kaduna when he was reading out the speech. He got to a point, he said, hey, this thing they wrote is just too much. That is case number one. Case number two, if you are vying for the post, you should internalize. The idea of manifesto is that it is your vision you give to people to go and break it down. So you have to have the first-hand knowledge. And that is why in every engagement, you should be able to stop and not allow others to speak. We've established that. The second part with respect to security and their strategy. You recall not long ago where they said they have, and in fact in their manifesto, a secret of dealing with insecurity in 6 months. So we asked them, since Buhari has about 6 months or 7 months to exceed, why don't you give him that secret so he can deal with insecurity? But the fact is they don't have the secret. And this is the proof. In the last 7 years or 8 years, I told you they've invested about 7 to 8 billion US dollars. So let us establish one fact. They have bought every weapon conceivable. We have Tucano, we have helicopters, we have guns, we have ammunition. Yet it has not ended insecurity because of this thing that they are lacking, which is also not in their manifesto. In other words, the labor of the foolish, we read every one of them because he doesn't know how to go to the city. What they lack and what Nigeria is lacking now is a revamping of the intelligence architecture of Nigeria, expanding the intelligence capacity of all the intelligence platforms so we can increase our foreign surveillance of agents within the country and agents in the border.
Well, Mr. Gwala, just 1 second, if you can hear me on that one, the level of insecurity, my apologies if you can hear me. Just a second. There are those who would also reference the fact that the quantum of insecurity we have on our hands now started under the PDP government. With the height of it was the abduction of the Chibok girls in 2014 and the delay in government taking requisite action to forestall the issues. There are those who wonder, look, how is that different from what we have on our hands now, given that the severity of it, the build-up started under the PDP government. The severity of it, happened under the PDP government. Yes, it has happened significantly so under this APC government as well. But there are those who would say that your party is no different. How would you respond?
I'm glad you said there are those. So I'm happy you are not the one thinking, because those who are saying that kind of a thought is called a lazy thought. This is a political party that is completing full second time cycle. You have the ample opportunity to correct what you claim was a fundamental problem. And that's why you have the opportunity after the first 4 years to say, I've started something, I need to complete that. So if, assuming, in fact, PDP was even a terrorist organization, I'm just giving the worst case scenario, you had the 8 years to be able to correct that. I have just said, and I'm saying that to those that you're talking about, that $7 billion have been invested and that these things have been procured. I'm going to say that to those that you are talking about, that you had the opportunity of critically looking at certain architecture of government that deal with insecurity. How many armies do we have? They told the Chatham House that we have a little less than 200,000. In 8 years, you could not expand the capacity of those armies. It is a party warring against its own party. They talk about policing. And that is why, as PDP, we offered alternative solution to dealing with this. We are looking at expanding the broad-based capacity first of intelligence platform, because this war is won and lost on intelligence first. That's why you have your Tucano, but it is packed somewhere. And you have to have intelligence that these people are moving here and there to be able to kick the engine of Tucano and go and shoot them. These bandits and terrorists are coming into cities and towns and even palaces and kidnapping people because of lack of intelligence. Let me push it further. In fact, our intelligence platforms are so effective and willing to work that we have seen that on 2-3 occasions where the intelligence platform were accused, these people have in fact released intelligence 6 months ahead of intended plan by bandits. What have the policymakers do that? They are busy trying to put pressure on intelligence platform to oppress and suppress and intimidate opponent and political party because they lack the idea of dealing with it. In other words, they are politicizing security. That is what they don't have. And if you give Bola Ahmed Tinubu 8 years, he will not find a solution, because fundamentally, the problem is there. So the fundamentals of their security architecture and philosophy is a failed one. There is no idea to how much they can forge ahead. Now, with respect to healthcare, because it's important they raise that as an issue in the Chatham House. Let me tell you the state of Nigeria today. Every year, on an average, 30,000 Nigerians travel abroad for medical tourism. Out of these 30,000 people that travel, the investment is within the range of $2 to $3 billion, right? And they cut across 4 segments: orthopedics, renal analysis, cancer, and cardiology. PDP as a party said that when we come, and Atiku said a few days ago, we are going to first look at healthcare insofar as it affects the Nigerian people. Revamp it. During this COVID, APC-led government got billions and billions from private sector to build up a wall of defense as far as the healthcare was concerned. You saw how doctors were dying in the front line. Now, how many doctors have left Nigeria? These billions have come. I have come to England. If I have to go back now, if I'm not vaccinated, I have to register and then pay for day 2 and day 7. All over the world, they've opened up their economy. They are no longer exploiting money from their citizens. Where are the monies going? So from COVID to this day, have you seen any world-class hospital investment by this government and by APC to say this is our approach to dealing with that?
All right, gentlemen, we need to wind down. So I'd like both of you to respond briefly to this. Just a minute, Mr. Bola. I'd like both of you to respond to this in 2 minutes each, if you can, starting with you, Mr. Ali. He also did say that INEC has not assured the APC on the functionality, reliability, and credibility of BVAS. And many people thought, wait a minute, but I thought your party recanted and said, okay, well, to extent, yes, it were misconceived, misquoted, as it were, but him saying it now will definitely raise a lot more questions because INEC has had several meetings with political parties. So is he not getting feedback? What does he really mean when he says INEC has not assured them on the use of BVAS?
Well, I think, you know, we've seen viewers used in the past in the Ocean election. It has worked perfectly well, and it has served the purpose it served. Well, let me just go slightly back to respond to something he said in the past. It just crossed my mind now about the party who has been in office in the last couple of years that is one that is likely to perpetrate violence. This is a government, this is a party, that is the APC under the Buhari's watch, which elections have been conducted in which the state actually, the party lost in some of the states. It lost in Oshun, for example. In the past, under PDP, we've seen instances where elections will be won, but then something dramatic will happen. We've seen that happen in 2003 and 2007. The election of 2007 under PDP's watch, even the beneficiary of that election admitted that, look, it was flawed, but substantially, according to him, late Umar Eradua, God rest his soul.
But he was doing something about it.
Yes. So now, coming back to this, you understand, when the candidate said he has not been assured, and I think from what we've seen, Beavers are the way to go.
So was he was he misinformed about the use of Beavers?
He might have some reservations, but certainly Beavers are the way to go.
All right, Mr. Bola, so I guess everybody may be on the same page on BVAS. I don't think your party has an issue with BVAS, do you?
No, the issue we have is the self-indicting eulogy that, you see, what he did yesterday, he inadvertently exposed their fundamental plans to rig the election. We told you a couple of weeks ago when their chairman was quoted to have raised issue about BVAS, the Nigerian people reacted, so they had to issue a statement to say, no, he was very out of context. Now, the candidate is telling the world he does not believe in BVAS because he's saying he has his question about BVAS. He forgot. BVAS has been used in Oshun, in Anambra, in Ekiti. BVAS is not going to be used. It has started. And in all these places where BVAS was applied, the elections went as a reflection of the people. In Anambra, ABGA won. In Oshun, PDP won. In Ekiti, APC won. BVAS reflected the near push towards a perfect political system. But up till this moment, this is what they are saying. There is even an allegation that they brought people from China and housed them somewhere in Lagos where they are cloning certain INEC documents. We are going to still invest.
All right, Mr. Bola.
When we make that, we are going to report to the necessary agency.
We need to wrap up at this stage, but he, through he made some statements, which is also quoted widely, that one of the candidates, one of the presidential aspirants or candidates may not be a Nigerian. Do you think your candidate is going to publish documents proving otherwise?
If you need it tomorrow morning, please let us know so that tomorrow he will publish every document in the mind of the Nigerian press. Atiku Abubakar, you saw the Arise interview, the Arise town hall. He sat there. He was speaking from the bowels of his heart and soul on the issues he cared about. Presidential, matured, and in no way abdicating responsibility to anybody.
All right, Daniel Bola, spokesperson, Atiku Okowa Presidential Campaign Organization, as well as Ali M. Ali, who is the Deputy Director of Media and Publicity for the APC Presidential Campaign Council. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for coming on today. All right, well, back in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back, Mr. Wilson in Naligu. As you've seen, that joins us next is the former AIG of Police. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today, sir.
Yeah, good morning. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
Yeah, we've seen several narratives. We're hoping this is not going to be one of them. But most recently is that of the NSA, the caution, the advice to governors or anyone whatsoever who have deployed this thugs for politics, those who try to prevent other parties from having peaceful campaign, as it were. And then the police themselves, they have also put in place a team trying to ensure that security of INEC facilities, above all else, is in place after the unfortunate incident in Ogun. But we've seen since that time another incident in Owerri and some other areas, INEC offices being raised, which raises questions concerning capacity, capability of security agencies to actually ensure that they are ahead of anyone who plans to foment trouble for this election. So from your perspective, having been there, what's the missing link? Why do these things happen in spite of the warnings coming from offices such as the NSA, the IGP's offices?
Yeah, I think there should be more robust law enforcement that is anchored on intelligence and detailed investigation and prosecution. Because if there are no apprehensions of offenders, this might continue. So what I think is the security agencies, they are doing their best, but there is a need to assuage the fears and concerns of the public by working impartially in a non-partisan and an impartial manner that will prove to the public that they have the capability and the capacity. And what I think there is a lot of missing link. I think communication. I don't want to believe that there are no arrests. Perhaps communication with the public and the citizen has not been very robust, so that people get to know. If you see INEC, INEC is always there to tell you, give you assurance, or we're going to transmit elections, results electronically, beavers, and give you that hope, that confidence. And I think the security agencies need to match that, especially the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, need to come out, have a communication and media strategy to be able to engage the public. I don't think it's not that I know this, but it has come to a time because there is going to be fear that the security agencies will be used by the incumbent to manipulate the process in favor, so that to remain in power at all costs. So in order to disabuse the mind of the public, there has to be effective communication to be able to deal with the emerging threats, the threats of violence, the actual the destruction of property of INEC, attack on INEC offices in Osun State, Imo, Ebonyi, Enugu states. There has to be something to be done to prove that the security agencies are really on top. They are on top, but I think there is a missing link. And in my mind, is that robust communication, the type we get from INEC, I think should be coming. And you begin to see, because I know that it is impossible that no arrest. It's just that the communication, in my opinion, and from my observation, really, that's what I think.
Your question, or let's say your answers, have also raised a number of other issues. It raised a plethora of questions, if you ask me. Because the first thing my colleague raised was the issue about the NSA's broadcast, the NSA's speech to Nigerians. I'm sure he was doing it through the media. As a security man, or I know you're still in the security sector, yeah, that's true. When you look at that sort of statement, what sort of response is it supposed to evoke? What effect, when security chiefs make those kinds of pronouncements, talking directly to people who understand what they're talking about, or who know that the message is being addressed to them, what sort of response are they hoping to evoke? We'll come to the other issues which you have raised.
Okay. You see, the NSA is more or less the national coordinator of security. So in his position, I think he's giving directive to the security chiefs, the head of the security agencies, the police, the military, and the other paramilitary. I take that as a directive, as an order to them to go out there and rein in these guys. That's what I understand by that. Because when you have the coordinator, the man that has the opportunity of seeing all the reports from the police, from the military, from others, as the national coordinator of security. So when he talks in that manner, I see him as talking from the background, first of all, from the information that he has, and then a call to action, more action, not that they are not acting. I see that as giving order. And when he speaks, I think he's also speaking on behalf of the federal, the top echelon. That's the directive that the NSA is giving.
But from the bulk of what you have seen so far, you are now calling for action to back up the talk, if I'm getting you correctly. Or because you're also talking about further communication, you want a sort of assurance. But some people will say, oh, we've heard some communication from the NSA, we've had some communication from the IGP, you know, and all of this are pointing to that area. It does seem that from what we're seeing, there is some talk, but not sufficient action to be able to back up this talk.
Yeah, I think what they are calling is for more action, not that there are no action, certainly. But I know Nigerians want to see those that attacked the INEC office in Ebonyi apprehended. Nigerians want to see those that attacked INEC offices in Osun and Ogun State apprehended. And then it gives them more assurance. I think that's what Nigerians are calling for, because I'm not just talking about empty communication. I'm saying that there are actions they have taken to prevent those attacks. And those measures, it is possible there were also clashes when this happened. I think Nigerians will just want to know. That's the point I'm trying to make. I am not saying there are no actions, because all INEC offices are provided, because you must have we must provide physical security for the INEC staff. You must provide physical security for INEC assets, which includes buildings and equipment. It is impossible that a DPU will not have deployment.
If I could just follow up on that communication bit.
Yes.
Wasn't it the same thing while you were in service? It hasn't changed. So why was it the case that they don't communicate as much?
No, well, what I want to say is this. When I listen to the spokesperson, when I listen to INEC, it gives you...
I mean with the police now, within the police.
Yeah, within the police. Well, the first PRO has been issuing statements. But I think people want to see, in Olu, there was attack, so arrests were made, and then the case is being investigated, and then prosecution is ongoing. I think people want to see that more.
So I didn't say that you said that there was no action. I said you're calling for more action, or you're calling for communication backed up with action.
Yeah, because I know that there are all these places, there are deployments. And when these people went there to attack the facility, like in Ebonyi, for example, I am sure they must have had encounter with the police there. And if, for example, in the unlikely event that the officers deployed in those locations were not there when these people came, I know action is also ongoing. These are things that can be communicated, to the public. This office was attacked. We observed so and so, and this is the action we are taking. I think people of the populace, the public, to ensure that there is a deliberate and intentional effort to protect them. They need to hear what you are doing.
The populace will know when action has been taken, because we believe that when action is taken, the police always makes it a point of duty to communicate. They let us know when it is that those people have been apprehended. But so far, as you have mentioned, in all of the attacks that have taken place, we haven't heard any of these things. So it does appear that there's been a lot of talk, but very little action, especially on these issues which you have raised, backing it up. And let me take you to task on this issue of partisanship. The fear that a lot of people have, or some people have, about security agencies being used for untoward purposes. What are some of the steps you think need to be taken to be able to show that in any election, the police, not just the police now, but security agencies will play a very neutral role? How can the security agencies, buoy the confidence of the public that they're there to be neutral and just ensure that elections are conducted in a safe environment?
But I think that is ongoing. If you listen to the President, Commander-in-Chief, let me start from there. At the United Nations General Assembly in New York, he was very clear. The security agencies will be apolitical, and he will bequeath to the nation a free, fair, and credible election. And then, speaking to the police management team, from commissioners of police to the IG, he repeated the same thing. Police be apolitical. Yesterday, he was in Sokoto. He stated the same thing. So the service chiefs and the Inspector General of Police have no other reason but to follow the step and the directive of the Commander-in-Chief. And I said that. And I think I am aware that there are deliberate efforts by the Inspector General of Police to embark on massive training of personnel, right from the very junior rank of the inspectorate rank of the commissioners of police. And they are being given booklets, containing clear directives on what they are expected to do. So training is ongoing. And once training, these are the things, this is professionalism, that is being given to them. And also, the Interagency Consultative Committee on National Security, which the IG and the chairman INEC chairs, they are meeting, I think they met just last week or so, to look at all that is going on. So I have every confidence, that the police and other security agencies are working to be clearly impartial. And how are they going about that? I think if you come to look at it this way, once there are applications for campaigns, they provide security for all the campaigns, as far as I'm aware. And I think that is one aspect. Because in the build-up to the election, it is not possible that if you give license to Party A, or you provide security for Party A, and you don't provide for Party B, then something happens. If the billboard of a candidate is destroyed, and a report is brought to you, and the suspect is there, and you don't go arrest, I think that will not happen. So I think from what I am aware, the directive of the Inspector General of Police to all the police personnel is whatever report is brought, it should be done with impartially and in a way that it will not be seen that you are backing any political party.
But do you consider the statements of the president which you referred to? Is it sufficient? Because even after that, we have still seen states, opposition parties in states complain of police not being neutral in carrying out their responsibility.
Yeah, you see, all these things, these are issues you document and make a formal report.
To who? To the police themselves, who are the ones who's going to hold them accountable?
I have been in a position that some of these things are individual things and are based on your professional background. Unless there are other connections, might be for corrupt purposes on other things. But I am aware that I have worked with this Inspector General of Police. We work together at various, so I know that he is a fair-minded individual.
Yeah, but
and I'm also aware that the directive the president has given, he is very dead serious about it. I am very certain about it. So if the Chief of Army Staff or Chief of Defense Staff or the IG or the NSCDC or TSS or whatever, they're on their own. But the directive of the president, yes.
Because yes, you refer to the statement of the president, that of the IGP, who are fair-minded persons, but we know that it's going to take just those two fair-minded persons to correct the ills within the force.
Yes.
What should we do to ensure that we don't just rely on strong individuals, to ensure that institutions are not beholden to any individual? Because there could be a president or an IGP who may not be fair-minded. What then happens to the force? They pander to the whims and caprices of the president or the IGP?
The force has processes for dealing with issues. And these issues don't die. So if you now compromise, it doesn't die because the records are there. And so my advice to the public, therefore, would be that once you have such, you document them and you make a formal complaint. They will be investigated. You see, when you are dealing with law enforcement, there are processes and procedures that it could take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years. The matter will still be investigated. That is part of it's all part of community policing, that everybody has a stake. And having this stake is not to allow that somebody else is going to do it.
Not that I'm being pessimistic.
Yes.
When you say 1 year, 2 years, 3 years.
No.
We have several cases of unresolved murders in this country, notable journalists, several persons who have been killed. Nobody is held accountable. Nothing has come up of those.
I want you to realize that in modern times, technology has a big role to play. Either from forensics, information.
Does police have forensics?
Oh, very robust. The Nigeria police has one of the best today, I think on the West Coast, has one of the best forensic science. The German GIZ, over the past 4 or 5 years, I was part of the process of that training. That was part of the German government support to Nigeria and the Nigeria police force. So I can say with confidence, there is forensic science is well established in the NPF. And so some of these matters that you see can be properly investigated.
So, but you started out with talking about intelligence.
Yes.
So why is it that is still a challenge, that police cannot foil some of these attacks? They end up happening because after the one in Ogun, the police said, well, we were caught pants down this time. Next time, it will never happen again. And weeks after, we'll have another one.
Yeah, I want you to approach the issue of intelligence from a multi-dimensional perspective. Why do I say that? The public also has a role to play. These guys are no ghosts.
But the police has to earn the trust of the public.
Yeah, but and that is the area of community policing which has been entrenched in the MPF. That these are problems that the community, that once there is robust partnership, the problem solving, the police and public coming together to solve this problem. So if you look at intelligence as only coming from the police and the public not having an important role, the public has an important role to play. But they usually come with, well, when we tell the police, this happens. So the public, people should come forward and tell the police, we have some guys in this area, we don't know what they do, we don't know whether they are responsible for some of these incidents. And then, because these are, there are security threats that will emerge. The DSS will supply the MPF, and there is a lot of sharing of information among the security agencies. And from the feeds, they also take from the public. These are processed, become actionable intelligence. So it is occurring, but I want you to also understand there are limitations of the police in terms of human resources, in terms of equipment. I have always stated it, even right here in your studio, that where you have about 300 police personnel in the police division using 3-4 vehicles, you know we're not serious. Because how are they going to be able to respond? What quantity of fuel do you give them?
So funding and welfare is key as well.
So it is also important that funding, welfare, equipment will help the police. So once you have, there are occasions somebody brings a report, you can't move.
Well, there's a fundamental challenge about the structure of policing. So that I think that speaks to the heart of the entire matter. Let's bring in Lagos Studios. Go ahead, guys.
Thank you, Chamberlain. I just want to very quickly, take on that intelligence angle. I'm glad you started it out, Chamberlain. Mr. Nyalugu, going specifically to addressing insecurity, especially during the elections, not a few times, quite a number of times, the police always lets us know that, look, we know that there is going to be an increased threat to security as we build up to the elections. That's something that the police has done quite sometimes. In fact, almost every state, virtually every state in the country, there's always that yellow, red, green, or whatever colors you code each state with, that, the level of security and all of that. But there is also one word that the NSA used, and I think we've heard the police use that word as well, which is that of thugs being used by politicians. Speaking intelligence, how difficult is it for the police or the intelligence community in the country to trace the thugs that perpetrate election insecurity to specific politicians or money bags who sponsor them?
These are the product of investigation, because when you investigate a matter, you must be able to link the suspect with the crime. Now, you make an arrest of a supposed thug. Once you have this thug in your custody and you are investigating, you've got to be able to establish a nexus between that thug and his sponsor. And if it is found that he is sponsored, it becomes a conspiratorial crime.
Okay, so Mr. Ilenglegu, since 1999 until now, just a quick one, Mr. Ilenglegu, because we are rounding off. Since 1999 until now, have there been such connections between one thug or the other and a particular politician or sponsor since 1999 until now?
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, several arrests have been made. And I remember one particular set in the North Central where one notorious individual was suspected to be a thug. I remember everything was done, he was apprehended, and I think either he was charged or so. I think a lot of people that are believed to have engaged in such toward act have been arrested. I don't have the statistics right here in the studio, but it is correct to say that such people have been arrested.
Yes.
And where there has been a linkage to whoever sponsored them. Because you can come, this person is sponsoring this, you must have had evidence. If you don't have had evidence, you are not going to be able to prosecute.
So essentially then, Mr. Inologo, you're saying that it will be practically impossible, okay, maybe I should be softer, difficult for the police to stop election insecurity simply because we cannot connect the thugs or the people who foment these election insecurity in various communities all over the nation to specific people whose interests that they are serving. Is that what you're saying?
No. You see, you must commend the security forces, especially the MPF, in carrying out special operations. Once elections are coming, you develop a threat analysis, and certain people and certain areas that you believe some people of questionable character could be. Such special operations are carried out. They are screened. They are investigated. If they are found culpable, if offensive weapons and other things are found in their possession, they are apprehended, investigated, and prosecuted. A lot of measures that the police and other security agencies are taking, without those actions, without the disruptions of those activities, you would have had more cases. So it is not correct to say that those people have been left just released to cause mayhem, to unleash mayhem. That's not true. So the point I'm taking is that a lot of arrests are being made. These guys are being investigated.
We hear you.
So, but as to be able to link, I think some have been, I believe, but I don't have any statistics as I speak.
Will it be tantamount to taking the NSA and the IGB and the president for granted if another attack were to happen either in INEC office or any thug preventing people from campaigning?
3 of us are in the studio here. For example, we are 4, 5, 6. Can you tell me who is capable of doing something next? So, once we do, what the security forces do is to call for the cooperation
of the public.
But if
another attack were to happen, that would be taken down for granted,
you can never, a lot of our attacks have also been prevented.
Yeah,
in the 774 local government areas.
If it were to happen again, they will be taking, they'll be calling their bluff. That's what they will make.
No. But as we speak today, as I sit in your studio to speak, and I think some guys out there are listening, people, officers, personnel are not sleeping. They are doing everything possible to apprehend these bad guys, these enemies of the society.
We encourage them
these
to keep
dangers to our society. They are being apprehended.
All right, Mr.
But we need to tell you that this is being done. And, and they have been done.
And we also need to hear that this has been prevented such that there will be no attack seen to happen wheresoever, and thugs arrested if they prevent any party from campaigning. Thank you for coming on. Always a pleasure to have you, Mr. Naligu. Let's take a look at some comments that you have sent to us. This first one comes through from Professor Charles, talking about Tunubu at Chatham House. He says, charity begins at home. Going to London for interview is not bad, but it should have been started from Nigeria. Candidates are contesting for the post of Nigerian president, not British. How many Americans, British candidates contesting for elections in their countries come to Nigeria for interviews? Nigerian leaders go abroad for medicals, take their children abroad for schooling, and want foreign investment for growth and development. Politicians are exploiting vulnerable Nigerians who are deprived, poor, illiterate.
Well, this email is from Badi Emmanuel, and he's also talking about Nigeria and the 2023 general elections. He says good leadership and performance are central factors in the running of any government. If success is to be achieved in the 2023 general elections, competence should be a basic characteristic of anyone that indicates to govern Nigeria. Every Nigerian should act and draw a conclusion for the sake of their future generations.
This one from Festus Akimboyewa says, sadly, violence is still one of the weakest points of our election. The police and other security agencies must respond to political violence swiftly and in a non-politicized manner. Politically sponsored thugs must face the full wrath of the law.
How about the sponsors? Professor Inakana says security of INEC's property must not be compromised in an electoral season. Security agencies must work together to de-escalate this destruction of physical infrastructure and voting materials. INEC can't be cowed into using non-PVC in the electioneering process.
Okay, so thank you very much indeed, everyone, for those messages and more. We will be back tomorrow. I am Chamberlain, so goodbye.
Thank you for watching. I'm Malkwelgu Yusuf.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for sharing your morning with us. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
Have a wonderful rest of your beautiful day. I'm Ayo Makinde. Bye for now.